Winterfell sleeps under a hard black sky, the walls silvered by moonlight and old snow. The godswood is still, too still, until the face in the heart tree seems to change. Its carved eyes glisten red as if wet. The ravens on the towers stop calling. The direwolves in the kennels begin to whine and pull at their chains. Somewhere deep beneath the castle, in the crypts where the kings of winter rest with stone wolves at their feet, frost creeps across ancient swords and climbs the statues like living breath. Inside the great keep, Catelyn Stark labors through a birth that feels wrong from the first cry to the last shudder of pain. Maester Luwin notices oil lamps guttering without wind. Water in a basin skins over with ice, then melts, then freezes again. Outside, the hot springs that keep Winterfell warm release a sudden rolling steam that cloaks the towers like a veil. When the child is born, she does not cry immediately. For one terrible second, everyone in the room believes she is stillborn. Then the infant opens her eyes, and every candle in the chamber flares white-blue. Frost blooms over the bedposts. The child draws her first breath, and the heart tree outside sheds a single red leaf onto untouched snow. The baby finally cries, the walls stop trembling, the cold lifts. Ned Stark enters to meet his newborn daughter. He sees only a small, red-haired infant in her mother's arms and hears Luwin say that the girl is strong. She is named Sansa. Outside, the wolves stop howling, but the old gods do not go quiet. Something has awakened with her, something older than Winterfell itself, and it retreats into her blood to sleep. Years pass. Sansa grows into everything the North expects a noble daughter to be. She is graceful, courteous, soft-spoken, lovely, and gifted at every gentle art. She embroiders beautifully. She sings with a sweet, clear voice. She smiles when expected, curtsies at the proper depth, and listens to the songs of Florian and Jonquil, gallant princes, golden queens, and heroic knights as if they were maps of the world itself. No one notices how often strange things happen around her. When she is upset, candles bend toward her without melting. When she is lonely, snow gathers on windows in the shape of flowers and wolves. Birds sometimes land on her sill as though summoned. Once, while practicing stitches in a tower room, she pricks her finger and a line of blood touches white cloth. Every thread in the room knots itself at once. The accidents are small, easy to dismiss. A draft, a trick of light, a frightened child imagining things. Winterfell is ancient, and ancient places always seem to breathe around those who grow up within them. Sansa herself does not understand what is happening. She only knows that certain feelings make the world around her feel thin, as if something behind it is listening. Sometimes when she touches the bark of the heart tree, she hears whispers that are not words but memory. Cold halls, old crowns, women wrapped in wolfskins, queens who never wore gold because snow itself answered them. She does what frightened children do. She tells almost no one. The only person she trusts enough is Jeyne Poole. Jeyne first learns the truth on a summer evening after Sansa wakes from another dream. Sansa's face is pale, her hands shaking, and frost rims the water pitcher despite the warmth of the room. Jeyne thinks it is a prank until she sees rose petals on the table lift into the air and circle Sansa as though caught in an invisible whirl. Sansa breaks down, ashamed and terrified, convinced she must be cursed. Jeyne is frightened too, but she is young and loyal and dazzled by secrets. She swears she will tell no one. From that moment on, she becomes keeper of the only truth Sansa cannot bury. Together, the girls build rules for the power they do not understand. Sansa must not let herself become too angry. She must not cry near open flame. She must not sleep beneath the heart tree after dark. And if the whispers come again, Jeyne must wake her. For a while, that is enough. But the older Sansa grows, the more the thing inside her stirs. It does not feel evil. It does not feel good. It feels ancient, watchful, and immense. It feels like standing on lake ice and hearing something move beneath it. The Peace of Winterfell ends with the thunder of royal wheels. King Robert Baratheon arrives with his court, dragging the South behind him in velvet, steel, silk, perfume, and hunger. Everything changes at once. Music fills the halls. Servants run day and night. Princes and queens and hounds and banners flood a place that once belonged only to wolves and snow. For Sansa, it is everything she has ever dreamed. Prince Joffrey is handsome in the southern way, all polished gold and princely arrogance she mistakes for strength. The queen is radiant. The ladies glitter. The songs she loves suddenly feel real enough to touch. But the castle itself hates the visitors. The heart tree bleeds sap more heavily the night the royal party arrives. The direwolves bare their teeth at the Lannisters. Sansa feels pressure in her skull whenever Queen Cersei passes near her, as if invisible claws are testing the edges of her mind. At the feast, goblets tremble when Joffrey laughs at something cruel. A serving girl trips near Sansa and swears later she felt the floor shift. Then Bran falls. The entire mood of Winterfell shatters in a single day. One moment there is tournament brightness and wedding talk. The next there is blood, panic, broken bones, and grief that spreads through the castle like smoke. Sansa is horrified, but what frightens her more is the wave that surges through her body when she sees her mother's despair. Every torch in the corridor outside Bran's room gutters low. The shadows crawl up the walls in long black fingers. Her own skin turns ice cold. Jeyne grabs her hand and steadies her before anyone notices. After Bran's fall, the power begins to pulse more often, as if the castle's suffering has fed it. Sansa dreams not of songs now, but of snow-covered battlefields, giant white trees, and a woman wearing a crown of carved weirwood branches. The woman has Sansa's face, older and harder, with eyes full of stormlight. She never speaks. She only points south. When King Robert asks Ned Stark to ride to King's Landing as Hand of the King, Sansa is delighted on the surface and deeply uneasy underneath. She wants the South. She wants the court. She wants the prince. But the moment the decision is made, the old fear returns. The walls of her bedchamber frost over from the inside. In the godswood, the heart tree sheds another red leaf, though it is the wrong season. The power does not want Winterfell left behind. Or perhaps it does. Sansa cannot tell which is worse. The royal progress south is slower and dirtier than songs ever promised. The road is mud, horse sweat, creaking wheels, sharp tempers, bad weather, and too many eyes. Sansa still dreams of courtly romance, but reality keeps cutting through her illusions. Arya is happier outdoors than among ladies. Joffrey's charm hardens into something brittle and mean whenever he is crossed. The hound's face unsettles her. The queen watches everything. Lady remains Sansa's greatest comfort. Her direwolf is quiet, elegant, and deeply attuned to her moods. When Sansa cannot sleep, Lady lies beside her tent or beneath her window like a living guard against whatever stirs in the dark. Sometimes, in the hour before dawn, Sansa wakes to find Lady staring at empty space, hackles raised, as though seeing shapes that no human can. Jeyne notices too. The wolf always knows first. Strange incidents follow Sansa down the road. A wheel breaks the moment she fears an accident. Rain stops at the edge of her tent but pounds everywhere else. Once, after a noble lady mocks the north within Sansa's hearing, the woman's silver mirror frosts over so completely that it cracks when touched. The secret is becoming harder to keep. Near the trident, fate arrives in the form it always does. Childish pride, cruelty, and one irreversible moment. Arya's play fight with Mycah turns dangerous when Joffrey intervenes. Steel flashes. Fear spikes. Nymeria attacks to protect Arya. Sansa is pulled into the chaos not as a witness but as a fracture point. She sees Joffrey's rage, Arya's terror, blood in the water, and suddenly the whole world around them feels thin again. But the scene passes too fast. No great power erupts yet, not then. The true breaking point comes later in the aftermath, when Cersei demands justice and, unable to find Nymeria, turns her cruelty toward Lady. Sansa cannot understand it at first. The queen's words do not fit any song she has ever loved. Lady did nothing. Lady was not even there. Yet the sentence gathers force in the air with every adult who does not stop it. Robert is weary and unwilling. Cersei is implacable. Joffrey wants pain. Sandor Clegane brings death like a habit. Even End, honorable and heartsick, cannot find a path that saves them all. Sansa begs, pleads, breaks. And the thing inside her wakes fully for the first time. The execution ground is a quiet clearing not far from the camp. It should have been a simple, terrible mercy. Ned Stark intends to do it himself because he will not let strangers butcher his daughter's wolf. Lady stands trusting and calm at his side. Sansa follows, shaking so badly she can barely breathe. Jeyne runs after her. The Queen's men linger. The Hound watches. The entire scene narrows to steel, fur, and the sound of Sansa's pulse. When End lifts the sword, Sansa screams. The sound does not end with her voice. It keeps going through the trees. Every living thing in the clearing stops. The air drops from summer warmth to winter-killing cold in a single heartbeat. Frost races over grass and stones. Horses shriek and rear. The Hound stumbles back as ice crusts over his boot. Men reach for weapons, but their hands lock around hilts as skin freezes to metal. Ravens burst upward from nearby branches only to hang in the air, wings beating against a pressure no one can see. Sansa stands at the center of it all, tears frozen on her face, hair lifting around her as though submerged in water. Her eyes are no longer entirely her own. Pale light gathers beneath her skin. Behind her, the shadows of the trees lengthen and twist into wolf shapes. End lowers ice at once, but the power has already chosen the moment. The ground cracks in branching lines from Sansa's feet. Thin spears of white root and ice punch upward around Lady like a cage made to protect, not imprison. One of the Queen's guards lurches forward, and the nearest shadow wolf slams him to the ground hard enough to stop his heart. Another man drops his spear and tries to run. Frost crawls up his legs and locks him in place to his knees. The Hound draws steel, and then hesitates for perhaps the first time in his life as the tip of his sword blackens with rime. Cersei's entourage erupts into panic. Some fall to their knees, some pray, some choke on terror. Jeyne is crying openly now, not because she fears Sansa, but because she sees what the world will do if it ever understands. Sansa herself does not seem fully present. The force moving through her is ancient and furious, less like a girl casting a spell and more like a forgotten season reclaiming the world. Trees groan. The stream nearby skins over with ice. For a terrible instant, everyone present understands the same thing at once. If she loses herself completely, every person in that clearing will die. End steps toward her anyway. He moves slowly, sword lowered, face lined with horror and love. He speaks with the calm of a father soothing a child after a nightmare, though no words need to be heard to understand what he is offering. Safety, home, trust, his refusal to fear her. Lady presses against Sansa's side. That simple touch breaks the storm. The white light drains, the shadow wolves dissolve, ice stops climbing, the clearing exhales, men collapse sobbing, frost cracks off armor and leather. Sansa blinks as if waking from a dream and sees the dead guard, the terrified faces, her father's expression, Lady still alive beside her. Then she faints. When she wakes, the camp is in chaos, but Lady is alive. Nothing will ever be simple again. Ned Stark tries to contain the disaster before it becomes a war of fear. The official story changes 3 times in a single afternoon. First, there was no incident. Then there was a freak storm. Then a northern curse, some old superstition attached to direwolves and grief. None of the lies are strong enough. Too many men saw too much. 1 is dead. 2 more will never regain full use of their hands. The Hound says little, but his silence is more dangerous than rumor. Cersei is not fooled. She knows power when she sees it, even if she does not understand its shape. Her first instinct is to destroy the threat. Her second is to possess it. She looks at Sansa now not as a future daughter-in-law, but as a weapon someone else might seize. Joffrey, meanwhile, is shaken in the ugliest possible way. He is both terrified of Sansa and newly obsessed with mastering her fear. A prince who expected admiration has glimpsed something he cannot dominate, and the sight festers in him. End nearly orders Sansa sent back to Winterfell at once. Only the politics of the court, the king's expectations, and Sansa's own pleading delay it. She swears she did not mean to do any of it. She swears she can control herself. She swears Lady keeps her calm. Some of that is true. In private, Jeyne helps Sansa piece together what she remembers. It is almost nothing. Terror, grief, a roaring in her ears, a sense of countless eyes opening in darkness, and one image above all others, a line of women in ancient northern dress standing beneath pale trees, watching her as if they had been waiting for centuries. That night, Sansa touches Lady's fur and sees flashes she has never seen before. Men in bronze armor, Winterfell unfinished and new. A girl with red hair, wolfskins and bare feet standing at the edge of a frozen lake while dead things move beneath the ice. The vision ends with the girl turning and her face is again Sansa's own. The power is not random, it is inherited, old, waiting. Maester Luwin is not present to help. Old Nan is far away. N knows pieces of northern history but not this. The Starks have old blood, yes. The blood of the first men. Warg blood perhaps in rare branches. Greenseers in children's tailies. But this is something else, something more volatile. Not merely seeing through wolves or trees, but commanding fear, cold memory, and the very atmosphere around her. Sansa begins to understand the true horror of her situation. If the South learns what she is, they will never see a daughter, a lady, or a future queen. They will see a monster to chain, a miracle to own, or a threat to kill. So she smiles when required. She lowers her eyes. She practices being harmless. And the most dangerous secret in Westeros rides on toward King's Landing. King's Landing receives Sansa Stark as if nothing has changed. Trumpets sound. Silk banners move in the wind. The Red Keep rises hot, red, crowded, and alien above the city. To the court, she is still the pretty northern girl promised to Prince Joffrey. To Sansa, it feels like arriving inside a mouth. The capital is the worst possible place for her power. There are too many lies here, too much violence hidden under perfume, too many ambitions pressing against one another in narrow halls. Every time Sansa walks through court, she feels currents moving beneath language. Resentment, lust, fear, malice, hunger. The city hums with them, her magic reacts like a struck string. In the godswood of the Red Keep, the old power is weaker than at Winterfell because the heart tree there is carved from oak, not weirwood. Yet even here Sansa feels watched. She places her hand on rough bark and receives a vision so sharp it buckles her knees. She sees the Red Keep not as it is, but as it will be one day, burning, collapsing, full of ash and screaming. For one impossible second, the Iron Throne is buried in snow. After that, she stops touching trees. Varys notices her unease. Littlefinger notices her fear. Pycelle notices that glass cracks in rooms after she leaves. The court is built on observation, and Sansa is too radiant a puzzle to remain unstudied for long. Jeyne becomes more than a friend. She becomes an anchor. She keeps Sansa focused on practical things, meals, dresses, breathing, sleep. She distracts her when the whispers come. She reminds her that she is still herself. But the pressure worsens. Sansa's dreams now stretch beyond the Red Keep. She sees the wall buried under aurora light. She sees a three-eyed shape in branches. She sees dragons turning in stone sleep across a sea she has never crossed. One afternoon, during a lesson on court manners, a noblewoman casually jokes that wolves belong skinned before a hearth. Sansa does not move. She does not speak. But every goblet in the room fills with dark red wine that freezes solid from the top down. When the women begin to gasp, Sansa excuses herself with perfect composure and leaves before the ice bursts the cups. Rumor spreads faster after that. The court begins calling her the Winter Rose behind closed doors. Some mean it admiringly, some do not. The nickname reaches Cersei, who sees the danger in allowing a myth to grow beyond her control. So the queen arranges a test. Not publicly, not openly, but cruelly as always. Lady disappears for part of a day. Sansa searches the Red Keep with a rising panic she can barely hide. Servants know nothing. Guards shrug. Jeyne insists this is deliberate. Sansa knows it too, though no proof exists. The queen would never take the wolf in daylight. She would corner the girl emotionally and wait for the result. Sansa follows instinct rather than logic. She descends to the lower levels of the keep where stone sweats in the dark. Torches smoke. Chains clink in far cells. She finds Lady not imprisoned but baited, locked in an unused chamber, half-starved, just frightened enough to provoke a violent response if the wrong man opens the door. 3 Lannister guards wait nearby, hidden badly. The moment becomes obvious. They are not there to protect the castle. They are there to see what Sansa does. This time, her magic does not erupt by accident. For the first time in her life, Sansa reaches for it. The air bends around her in almost total silence. No screaming storm, no wild blast of grief. The cold comes in controlled waves, sliding along walls, creeping under doors, swallowing torchlight in blue-white halos. The guards step out with hands on sword hilts, expecting a frightened girl. What they meet instead is something old wearing the shape of a frightened girl. Their shadows detach first. The darkness at their feet rises behind them in long lupin forms with eyes like embers under ice. One man runs before his sword clears the sheath. A second drops to his knees, choking as frost webs over his throat. The third manages a single step toward her before unseen force hurls him into the wall so hard the stone cracks. Sansa does not kill them. She could. She knows that with awful certainty. Instead, she lets them live in terror long enough to understand that Lady is not prey and neither is she. When she opens the chamber and Lady rushes to her, the whole corridor trembles like a living beast settling back to sleep. The queen's lesson fails. Sansa has passed beyond easy intimidation. But control comes at a price. The moment she returns to her chambers, blood begins to drip from her nose. Her hands shake uncontrollably. The room temperature drops until Jeyne can see her breath. Sansa nearly collapses. It becomes clear that using the power deliberately drains her, as if each act pulls something enormous through a body never meant to contain it. That night end finds her burning with fever and rimmed in frost. He has no more room left for denial. He finally confesses what little he knows. Long ago, before Andals, before crowns of gold, there were stories in the north of bloodlines touched by the old gods, not priests, not sorcerers in the southern sense. Living doors between memory and season. Rare, unstable, revered and feared. If such power truly slept in House Stark, it may have gone dormant for centuries. And now it has returned in Sansa. En's fear is not that she will become evil. It is that the world will force her into becoming something terrible simply to survive it. Sansa listens in silence. Then she asks the question that matters most, whether he is afraid of her. He is. But he loves her more than he fears her. That answer saves them both. The episode drives toward its final movement as several dangers converge. Ent's investigation into Jon Arryn's death is closing in on the truth of the Lannisters. Cersei knows time is running out. Varys senses a political earthquake forming. Littlefinger begins calculating how a supernatural Stark daughter could alter every alliance in the realm. And beyond all their games, the magic inside Sansa grows more responsive, as if events themselves are feeding it. The hand's tourney provides the perfect public theater for disaster. Thousands gather, knights crash in splinters, lords drink and wager, ladies smile behind jewels. It is exactly the kind of glittering spectacle Sansa once adored, but she feels none of that innocence now. Instead, she senses currents under the crowd: contempt, bloodlust, vanity, treachery. The city wants violence. The court feeds on humiliation. When Sir Gregor Clegane erupts in murderous rage during the lists, the entire arena surges. Horses scream, men shout. The crowd leans forward as if hopping for death. Sansa's pulse sinks with the roar. The magic rises. She sees it then not with eyes but with whatever older thing looks through her. She sees the future branching wildly from this place. War in the Riverlands, end dead, her family shattered, the north bleeding, kings rising and falling, fire from the east, ice from the north, all of it rushing toward one another like storms. And she understands with awful clarity that her power is not merely reactive. It is tied to the turning of the age itself. The stands begin to ice over beneath her feet. Jeyne grabs her arm. Lady growls. End sees the change from across the gallery and starts toward her, but too late. A courtier behind Sansa, drunk and careless, makes some cutting remark about northern girls and their beasts. It is a small cruelty, insignificant in any other life. In this one, it is enough. A ring of white frost explodes outward from Sansa's seat. The nearest banners freeze solid and shatter. The wooden railings groan and split. A wave of unnatural cold races through the royal gallery, seizing breath in the throats of nobles and driving half the court to its knees. Horses in the lists rear and nearly throw their riders. For one impossible moment, snow begins to fall into the tourney grounds beneath a hot southern sun. The whole realm sees something impossible. Sansa rises, not screaming this time but standing in terrible stillness as winter gathers around her like a cloak. Her hair whips without wind. Her eyes gleam pale as moonlit ice. Around the arena, every shadow lengthens toward her seat. The panic is immediate. Some call it witchcraft, some cry miracle, some shout for guards. Cersei recoils. Joffrey stares in naked fear. Robert, half-drunk, looks suddenly sober for the first time in days. End reaches her. He does not restrain her. He simply stands beside her before the entire court, placing himself between his daughter and a world already deciding what she is. It is a father's defiance made visible, a declaration that whatever monster they imagine, she is still House Stark. Sansa turns her face slightly toward him. The storm hesitates. Then from somewhere far beyond King's Landing, something answers. The episode cuts between locations in rapid succession. Beyond the wall, deep in a haunted forest, blue eyes open in the dark. Across the narrow sea, in a hidden chamber in Pentos, 3 dragon eggs tremble imperceptibly. At Winterfell in the crypts, frost crawls again over the stone swords of dead kings. Back in the tourney stands, the snow stops falling. The cold recedes. The court remains stunned, half-frozen, and utterly changed. Sansa looks over the nobles of Westeros and finally sees them clearly, not as singers and queens and princes, but as frightened animals in silk, all of them small beneath older powers they do not comprehend. For the first time, she is afraid not of what might happen to her, but of what might happen if she ever stops holding back. The final image is Sansa that night at her chamber window, lady at her side, Jeyne asleep nearby from exhaustion. King's Landing sprawls below in torchlight. The city looks fragile, breakable. She places one trembling hand against the glass and watches frost spiral outward in the shape of a crown. Not a crown of gold. A crown of winter,